Well, hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Purposeful Marketing Podcast with Ari. Let's just start off right with Aaron, Mary, and James. This is going to be a fun episode, as you can hear it in my voice. We're going to talk about a topic about value and transference. What are the skills you took with you from other occupations into marketing? This is so wide open. It's so broad. I think it's going to be a fun one. So thanks for listening. I'm just going to kind of open it up to the group here, as we are three marketers with a non-traditional marketing background. And I know we have skills from other industries. Myself, I have retail, I have beverage. I've worked at both bookstores, Barnes & Noble and Borders. And these are the things that we've learned these skills and we've taken them with us throughout our career. And that's what I want to talk about today. So James, Mary, what do you got for listeners?
The first thing I have for listeners is there are indeed more than two bookstores. Support local bookstores. But I know that, Aaron, you and I have talked about this before because we both have quite a lot of food service experience. And I think about, how valuable that experience has been. And I recently had a former colleague, still friend, reach out to me about transitioning from back of the house kitchen work to content writing because she has a friend who's trying to do that. And I think the biggest thing that you learn that's probably valuable in any job, but is super valuable at times in agency marketing is triage. Just the ability to not ever be drowning. You learn in food service really quickly that when 15 tickets print off in 30 seconds, it becomes immediately obvious to you that nothing has changed about your job. That what am I supposed to do? There's not room on the grill for all this food. It just isn't going to happen. All I can do is just cook the food. You learn really quickly how to set that mindset up. And I think it's really helpful when you're starting a Friday and you're looking at your day, and maybe you like to think about getting stuff done during a week. You're looking at your day and you're thinking, my gosh, this is too much stuff to do. I think it's easier for me than probably for some other people to just sit down and start doing the work, and you just do your best every day. I think that a lot of that is probably hard for some people to cultivate, but people that work in the back of the house at kitchens or serving drinks at volume bars or a barista at a high volume coffee shop, I think that you can cultivate that pretty quickly in those work environments.
I think that's such a great example, James. And the word triage is very important to marketers. Where it resonates with me is, we all wear many hats, and there's many tactics we're executing on. There's many key results, objectives we need to reach. But at the end of the day, you're just a marketer and you need to do what's in front of you. I think that's what reminds me the best about triage is understanding kind of what's the task at hand and what's my why. If I'm supposed to drive revenue, I'm doing the task that drives revenue, even though there's 15 more tickets to do other marketing activities. And I think, again, I have lived that as well, being a barista, and there being mobile orders, there being people in line, there's being someone messing up in the bathroom, and you're there's so much to deal with at once. But I think that's an absolutely transferable skill you can take with you, is understanding how to look at the whole scope of everything in front of you and knowing what direction you're going into. I think marketers can learn a lot from that. Mary, any thoughts on that, or have you experienced that before?
I love that. I worked in a retail store for a long time. It was a small business. They sold running shoes, apparel, and gear. And it was a pretty popular running store. It got voted best running store a few years in a row. And we would have high volume days, especially in the summer, marathon training. Everyone's really excited. So I can definitely relate to the triage. And I love that you said, Aaron, what's your why? Why are you here? And you're always going to have those things come up that don't really answer the why, right? So my feedback for that, and just from my experience, I think as long as like 80% of your activities are being pushed toward the why, being pushed forward, you're pushing your efforts forward, you're pushing marketing source revenue pipeline, whatever your North Star metric is forward. It's okay if 20% of your activities are just like, I have to write this report that someone didn't do, or I have to do this agenda item that's just kind of nitpicky, but it doesn't really tie back to my goals. I have to do this budget planning spreadsheet, something like that. It's okay if 20% of your time is dedicated to that. But I was going to bring up customer service, and I'm sure you guys can relate to this, and you, Aaron, from retail, is learning how to talk to people when the power dynamic is not in your favor. So my experience, customer service in this running world, people are there to spend money on running shoes. And it was it's a really interesting experience. So you would fit people for running shoes. So you'd be right there in their face, face to face. And you're sizing their foot and watching them walk and asking them about their goals. And you are kind of in the lower power dynamic. They're there to give you their money and you are giving them some piece of equipment. So you are kind of serving them. And I think that is such an important skill. And you just meet so many different types of people that you're able to communicate across personality types. I think that is number one transferable skill, definitely in marketing, definitely in life.
100%. And I love both things you said. I want to comment on the 80-20 first. Is I think with the triage idea is you should really think about all the things you're doing and then strip away 80% of that and figure out the 20% of what you're good at, what's going to drive your key objective or metric. Do more of that. I think marketers, we do so much. We do too much. We experiment too much. I think if we just step back, triage, learn what we learned from food and bev, work in a restaurant, apply that to our marketing job, it's going to help us out. James, you want to riff on that at all before I throw out another point?
I think my riff would maybe lead us to another fun question, but sure. I think when I think about triage and how it sets up my mindset and how I go about, handling tasks over the course of a day, I think about the skill that definitely is one of those common transferable skills that you get asked about in interviews. And I almost certainly said oh yeah, I'm good at that. I can do that. And here I have examples of, here's where I've been good at. And that's time management, scheduling things. I don't do that well at all. And I think it's because I'm so into the idea that I'm going to come in, sit down, clock on, do the work, clock off, and get the hell out of there. I don't have I've really been trying to level that up. I feel it goes a little bit in contradiction with the same mentality that gets you through the triage type situations when you just have too much to do. But I'm kind of curious, since we all obviously, we didn't study marketing, we didn't start our careers in marketing, what, maybe the skill that you wished you could have brought over, or maybe a skill that you thought you had until you had to use it in marketing and realized you're actually only here when you could be up there.
Yeah, it's a really good question, James. I think where it takes my mind with time management is, again, going back to food and bev and working in a restaurant, is the task at hand is what manages your time. I need to get plates out the door. I need to get orders in front of customers. I need to make beverages quickly. So how that transfers to marketing is, I think if you have a very clear goal, key objective, KPI, metric, whatever you're following, that helps you manage your time. Generally, I also think time management is a skill that we all need to work on throughout our whole entire life as that changes. I know for me, I've been someone who's been really into scheduling out productivity, and I've kind of shifted that more so to understanding like what is productive for me and not so much the work itself. I think that's a good paradigm shift that we could riff on too. Um, I think before I move on to another question, like Mary, do you have any thoughts on what James is saying?
Yeah, my mind immediately went to two very important skills that I definitely wish I would have learned in school, and then one I wish I would have learned in life. The school one would be business acumen. So just understanding how different business models work, understanding what it means to be profitable versus having revenue coming in, learning how businesses use investments to their advantage. Like sometimes businesses are only profitable because they're also investing their money in other things. Like, so definitely business acumen was something I wish I would have learned or studied harder in school. And then soft skill would definitely be how to have tough conversations. Like luckily in my customer service job, most people were relatively happy. You'd have some like, customers who would come in a little bit upset every now and then, but it was, kind of as simple as giving them their money back or giving them a store credit or something like that. So having like actual real tough adult conversations, I wish I would have had more practice on that as a soft skill. What do you think about it, James?
I think in terms of tough conversations, I like to think of like tough customers. And I just constantly would remember, I think I had, in one of the restaurants I worked at, I had kind of become the guy that takes the customer that just kind of got screwed by the host and is just totally pissed and about to leave. Like I would get that customer. And that is so amazing for you and for your wallet because like there's nothing, they're the best customer by far is the customer that just got screwed by the host. You will make so much money off of that customer because you have something to achieve. Like it's not an achievement to provide good service in the United States of America anymore. Like that's just this status quo. People show up at restaurants and believe they're going to be treated like, like a new mom in the hospital. Like that's literally the kind of treatment people expect when they show up to a restaurant. So when you start so far in the hole, like you actually have something you can achieve. Like you have the ability to show yourself as, someone who stands out. I made so much money off of those people because it for some reason they think it's now impressive that I've managed to help them have a good time when all I really had to do was just change their general attitude. And then they would have a good service experience like they would have had in any other instance. I think like tough conversations probably are really similar in that someone kind of chooses to be a tough conversation for you. We were talking about this, you can kind of tell when someone just like wants to be difficult. When someone goes into a conversation saying like, I will get what I want at all costs and everyone else be damned. I think like when you're able to make that conversation something productive and something helpful, like people just respect you for it because they know that they weren't pulling their weight.
I think that's so well said, James. And what it reminds me is the three of us, we're all client facing and we work in an agency that we serve others. And that's a good framing to understand that one is we should help our clients, but also we are people and we don't have the answers to everything. And I think if you go down the path of, I need to solve everything for everyone all the time, you're going to hit some roadblocks or some frustrations. But what you should never do is kind of avoid those conversations. I always like the phrase, and this is from therapy, we can make that a transferable skill too, is don't aim for confrontation, aim for consultation, which means you have to have the conversation. And you're not having to have confrontation, but if you don't have it, you can't have a consultation, can't reach compromise ever. And I think for the three of us, there's plenty of times where the confrontation's right there. And maybe sometimes we partook in it, sometimes we avoided it. But I think that's a great skill, Mary and James, that you're bringing up, is just understanding how to have conversations with others, empathize with them, be able to talk about anything. And I think maybe, James, let me know how you feel, but as a philosophy major, there's no conversation that scares me. People scare me. I think that's really what we're talking about. You got any thoughts on that, James?
Yeah, I think for one thing, I think so often some of the people that, because sometimes it's like you get an email, say, or you get like, it's like getting called into the principal's office where you're like, this isn't good. Like, you know, when they're announcing your name over the loudspeaker in middle school, like come down to the office, you know it's not good. But sometimes those people in our work lives are these same people that we desperately want time with. Like, I mean, when I'm thinking about client facing, it's like, man, I would just love more time in front of the client talking things out. Like, the more I have that, the better my work is going to get. So like, if I get, you know, if I hear like, we need a meeting because X is not happy with this, I'm like, cool. Because like all that's going to happen is X is going to get better. I mean, like the thing is not going to get worse. I know that I'm not going to let it get worse. So I think you're right in saying like these things are opportunities that need to be seen as such, because if you show up thinking like, oh gosh, this is going to be, you know, I can't wait to just get reamed by the principal or whatever. It's like, you're not going to go anywhere. Like you're not going to get anything done. It's like your best opportunity to talk to the principal. How often is the principal one-on-one with a student? I mean, heck. So I kind of think like when if your boss isn't happy with something, or if, you know, someone's not happy with something and they have the ability to come to you about it and bring it up to you, it's almost always a person that you will benefit from one-on-one time with. I mean, like the people that can't just show up and be like, we need to talk about this, are probably all the people that you get to talk with all the time. So when someone is taking that liberty with you, presumably it's someone that you're like, well, I get a lot of value out of conversations with you.
So, and I just generally think the more you avoid the conversation, you delay the solution. And if you can put yourself in those positions to have those really hard conversations, I think that's going to help you in your marketing career. I know, Mary, you, not calling you out for clients, but I'm just saying you've experienced this, right? Even in-house too, you've had some really hard conversations in your career, and maybe if you have anything to share or some skills you've learned.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the problem I came up with, and I'm sure this is something other women can relate to, is if you're in a tough conversation with someone where the power dynamics are already skewed and you're kind of maybe on the lower end of that chain, it's really hard to voice your opinion. So you kind of fall back to listening, taking it in, and just saying, yep, like saying yes to everything. So any requests they have, any problems that come out of it, it's just like, oh, yep, I'm sorry. So I think, to your point, James, I think that's an excellent way to look at tough conversations, is like, this is actually not just an opportunity where I would have approached it early in my career, as this is an opportunity for me to solve a problem of somebody in an upper or mid-level management position. But instead, this might be the only conversation I get to have with this person in the next 6 months. You know, these guys are busy. They have other things on their mind. They have other people to talk to. So how can I also get the most out of this conversation? So I actually love that you framed it that way. I think that is really valuable advice for our listeners who are early in their marketing careers.
Yeah, and I appreciate you both speaking to this topic, because that one was a little heavier about having confrontation the right way. Just to make it more lighthearted, here was one of the ideas I had of transferable skills. So when I worked in a gym, one of the phrases that was told to me often was, move with a purpose. Now that phrase was applied to me to go clean equipment and make sure I'm always doing something. But I just love that mentality for marketers because, again, there's so many distractions. You're going to be asked to do so many things. You're going to wear so many hats. It's good to maybe step back and ask, am I moving in the right direction? Is this purposeful? Going back to the name of our podcast, right? What's the why? Why am I doing these things? How to apply that sometimes is, I'll use a very kind of boring example, but like say you open Google Analytics or you're looking at some data. Write down before you look at it, like why you're doing it. Otherwise, you're just going to waste time. I think for writing, it's the same way. Like, am I just going to take a blank page and start writing, or am I going to do an outline right now? Am I doing revisions? I think just stepping back, having that frame of mind, like, why am I moving? Move with purpose. I think that's a transferable skill that I apply throughout marketing. James, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's I think that's a great skill to have, and I think sometimes maybe because it's almost like it lets you apply your like kind of detached. I mean, I'm making a lot of assumptions about who you were when you worked at a gym, but like like I'm thinking about who I was when I worked at the pool. It makes you apply your kind of like so skeptical about why any of this matters kind of attitude in like a positive way, in terms of like needing to just find the reason that you're doing it, or find the reason that you're here and act accordingly. Like, I think it's probably while it was being used against you to eliminate downtime, I think it's a really useful sentiment in terms of eliminating wasted time at work. I'm kind of like the way that you framed it just made me think of like kind of like that general career advice you get, especially when you're like, I don't know, when you're in your early 20s or even like a teenager, you're constantly receiving like sometimes crappy career advice or like platitudes and stuff like that. I always think of when I was a server at this restaurant, and it was a brand new restaurant, and the people were really fun, and we were a fun place to be. And there was one particular like Saturday night that was just a freaking nightmare. And some of us were back in the morning to open on Sunday, and the GM was like, a lot of you work here because it's fun. You work here instead of working somewhere else because it's fun, but it's not going to always be fun. So if you're just here because you think that working here is really fun, like, you are going to be the person that's kind of complaining about how little money you're making as a server. You're going to be the person giving up all of your shifts in 5 months. And he's like, as a person who's made an entire career out of this industry, you have to be able to show up and enjoy the process of doing something well and taking pride in your work and seeing the results of the things that you're doing. You have to be able to enjoy just going to work and, putting in your time and getting better. And I was like, as the person who wasn't really having that much fun at work, I was like, thank you. Nice. I'm glad you framed it that. I'm glad you were so like, that's kind of how it kind of typified how I was thinking about work at the time. And I think it's just a really valuable kind of, I don't know if it's a platitude, but it seemed like a really nice cliche.
So I love a little nice cliche. Mary, what about you? Moving with purpose. Is that something you can apply to your job?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think your tip was great. One that helped me get out of like kind of the distraction thing as you're exploring other channels, and like, I'll be on LinkedIn sometimes and I'm like, oh my God, how much time did I just spend like scrolling through my feed? I think that screen checker on your phone, that has been super critical in my putting that down and being more self-aware, more focused in my both work life and personal life. So my goal is to bring that per day down. And if this is an embarrassing number, I'm sorry, but I really wanted to get it below an hour and a half a day of screen time on my phone. So we'll see if it's realistic. It's like towards the 2 hours right now. So I'm really trying to get it down. But I really want to hit on something James said too. I love that you mentioned you should have like a purpose in whatever job you're doing too. And that was something I feel like I lacked early on in my career and something that I really know I have now. So Gorilla has a great culture, love working there, love the people. It is also very fun, but that's not the reason I still work there. The reason I work there is because I want to change the way industrial companies think about, measure, and execute marketing. And I think Gorilla 76 as an agency sets me up the best to complete that goal. So I think making sure you have that career goal, even if it's just a temporary one. So to your point, James, maybe it is just I need to earn money to pay my way through college or to get enough money to spend over the summer. And I want to have fun too. But just always having it in the back of your mind, like, how can I be learning? What's my career goal? How can I keep doing things that push that forward?
I think that's such a great way to put it, to put a ribbon on what we're talking about here is these transferable skills just kind of happen to us, right? We were working another job. We're like, oh, that makes sense. We can apply it to a new job. Now, as you advance in your career, you should really start thinking about those goals, like Mary's goal that she just explained. That's going to help her move forward. That's going to help her move to the next path. I think a lot of time we just don't take the time to think about those things. And, even I don't have anything grand to say about why I chose the agency I chose. I just think that's a great life lesson, Mary, and I appreciate you sharing that. James, you have any thoughts?
Not really. I kind of think like, because I know we talked about stagnation, and during this conversation, I've been thinking about like a way to evaluate whether you're starting to feel stagnated could be something like, do I feel like I'm gaining any transferable skills in my job? Because now, because kind of where I'm thinking, this could be like a conversation for another episode given the time, but like, transferable skills you gain from marketing and how to apply them elsewhere, how to reach, because some people's career goals aren't going to be, advancing marketing for an industry or becoming a CMO at, a Fortune 500 company. Some people's career goals are going to be just wildly outside of the marketing realm. And I think, I don't know, I almost think that like the moral of the story is a lot of the transferable skills come from everything that isn't, what you learn in marketing school, or when you're doing marketing the way that like the process documentation says you should be doing it. Like that isn't where you get the transferable skills. You get the transferable skills in like the gray areas. And when it comes to like working with people, dealing with situations that weren't supposed to occur. I almost think like, I don't know. I know that people love being able to avoid like tough situations. And, I know that a lot of marketers feel like they're constantly being put in tough situations that they don't have and poorly equipped to handle them. But I do think that like, when you really like step back and look at it, it's like the same reasons that people don't like being in food service when they're little. And here we are talking about how meaningful that's been and us being able to be successful. I mean, I told the person I was talking to about moving into content writing that if I had only started working at restaurants earlier, like not waited till I was in college, but started when I was 16, that I'd be like 4 or 5 years ahead in my career now. That it was that important to me, gaining skills that mattered. So I think it's really valuable to think about all the tough situations you're put in and what you're actually learning from them. That isn't just, how to run Google ads, because they're going to be incredibly valuable for reaching goals beyond marketing.
Totally. And I think let's put that on the agenda, navigating your career and goals, I think is an important conversation for our listeners and us, the three of us here, as we think about it. That being said, I'm going to move with purpose and wrap this episode up. Essentially, kind of what we're saying is if you're not in marketing now, there's a path for you, right? And really be conscious of those skills you're learning now because they will be used later. And if you can take anything out of the episode, take that out. DM us, ask us questions, reach out to us, give us a call. We may have answers for you, but besides that, enjoy yourself and look forward to the next episode. Thank you.
Peace.